Okay, folks. So I'm running the air right now, just trying to get the windshield defogged. But I can see well enough to drive. But anyways, I'm actually rolling out relatively early compared to the usual. So hoping I can get to work a bit early. And obviously not as early as I would like, but maybe 10-15 minutes early so I can go and take care of that leftover stuff from yesterday. And obviously I'm concerned about any sort of potential backlash because other than the fact that I was stuck on this one task pretty much the whole day, is it just the general company culture? And in particular, there was one situation where a couple of the freezers were out of range when it came to the temperature, and I saw the email for that, and I contacted some folks who were working in that lab because I'm the lab owner, and I didn't get a response as to, okay, was that freezer, out of service at that point, or, what was happening. I didn't get a response back until almost 2 hours later, and I was already, at home. And of course, there's that sort of, it's almost like an unwritten expectation that if you're reaching out to go and do that, they're expecting you to be jumping up and running into the lab and kind of throwing yourself into the mix, so to speak, automatically without them having to give you direction or so, which again, a lot of this stuff is sort of I don't know, it's stuff that you only sort of figure out after they've already given you a bunch of guff about it. And I'm sure even if I go and point out the fact that the guy who was in there took almost 2 hours to respond to me, not informing me, okay, here's what's really going on, here's what you could do, because basically, even if I go do that, it's still gonna be one of those, that's not me, that's you, and if he comes over and yells at me, I might just snap at this point, because he's done that before in the past with other things where it was stuff that was blown out of proportion, and it turned out that no, actually wasn't that serious, or it wasn't me, who was really at fault. But essentially when he responded and he said, okay, there's other person in there who's moving stuff from that freezer to a different freezer, message him, see if you can help, so to speak. And I did, but it was not only was I already at home, but I don't check my phone when I'm driving for obvious reasons. So, by the time I was able to get a message out to her, she said that, they already moved everything, they're all done. Which, I mean, honestly, even if you only had, one or two people, unless the stuff was super heavy or so, it probably wouldn't take that much time to, relocate that from the freezer, a shelf in the freezer, to a cart, and then get the cart rolling over to the other lab. And that's gonna pass me again. What's going on here? But what was I saying? It wouldn't take them that long to just get it loaded onto a cart and then push it over to the other lab, and we're talking depending upon how many items, how many runs they had to do, 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes, So it's kind of I would have to actually be in the lab or be in the building at that point just to be able to stroll over. And I mean, I wish the guy had just responded right away, because the thing is it's sort of a damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of situation. Because when they make you the lab owner and you got freezers in there, and the temperature goes out of range, significantly enough, they're going to assign what's called an NER, a non-conformance event report. Basically, they're going to go and investigate why it's out of range, especially if it's over 3 hours, which was the case with one of them. If you as the lab owner don't remain cognizant of that, just sort of ask about it, you're obviously going to be dealing with some consequences, because it's this is your jurisdiction. Why weren't you aware of this? Were you aware that this happened? And that sort of thing. But at the same time, it's if I ask and somebody in there who's aware of the current situation, is the freezer down? Is it just out of range and they need to investigate stuff and the contents needs to be moved? They don't respond to you in a timely manner. There's timestamps on these messages, so I can find out that, hey, I sent this message at 4:10. You took till 6:05 to get back to me. The other person, there were 3 people on that build. The first person I contacted was not actually in the lab. As it turns out, she had decided to dip. I guess she had to go to her class or whatever. But she said she didn't know about that. She was on that build, but go contact this guy, and I did. And then he took 2 hours to get back to me. It's okay, whose fault is it? I asked if you had responded to me in 5 to 10 minutes when I was still in the building, and been here's what's going on. I would have been over there. But they take their time to do that sort of stuff. And since I'm the newer guy, and nobody wants to really step up and own up and go, hey, I was at the wrong, or maybe I could have responded faster. It's well, you're supposed to know all this stuff, It's that kind of environment. As to Dark Magician's comment about, the grass isn't always greener, and from what I remember, what he said, I think this work environment is already kind of an illustration of that fact, because maybe it wasn't the best decision to be leaving the old company. I definitely had issues with there, and I think that with the way things were going at the company, one of the biggest reasons why I left wasn't necessarily because it was horrible. There are definitely issues, but a lot of the reason was honestly because it was the workability of being there was heavily dependent upon the boss that we had sticking around, and it sounded like he was going to be leaving. And the way the management was, it was, I don't know, it's almost like they took the manager and they sort of sent him out to a re-education camp, to put it lightly. It was basically like that. And it was a case of he went from viewing people as people to viewing them as boxes, and he literally said that that, oh, now I see people as boxes, I don't see them as people. And to a certain extent, that is the way it is for leadership. You do have to, you can't be their buddy, you can't be your worker's buddy, you can't be the people your subordinate's buddy. You have to be the boss. But when I heard about that and I was seeing things the way they were going, it was okay, I better take this opportunity and at least get out of here. And then, depending upon how things go, either I try and go back, or I go to another place, or maybe the new place works out and I stick around for a year. Stuff like that was going through my mind, and I decided to take this chance. There's a pay raise and less commute, and etc. And of course, the possibility that I could work my way into an actual engineering position at this company, which that would be the idea. The idea would be to last for a year, assuming I'm not going in right now to get cut. And I'm not really laughing in the sense of funny. I'm just, it's nervous laughter. But assuming that, I could pull off a year, then get into the engineering side of things, and then I have that on my resume, and I can, get the heck out of there and go to another company where, it's sort of where I would want to actually be. If I had really been able to, I would have wanted to be an engineer at the other company, the old company, because not only what they were doing making DNA, which is pretty cool. But there were perks to the company culture to a certain extent. I mean, there were things I would say that made me want to leave, but that was mostly just in the manufacturing group. And there was, I think the problem was that it was sort of like hard to grow out of that. If you were a manufacturing person, they viewed you as a grunt, and you were just kind of stuck there. Not that you couldn't make good money, by doing 2 or 3 times the work, but as evidenced by how much I made and how much debt I was able to pay off and that sort of deal. But it was one of those situations where not only would you get stuck in a place, but there was definitely people will talk about nepotism, but it wasn't nepotism in the classic form of Bob hires his nephew and promotes him to manager over the whole department sort of thing. It wasn't like that. It was like a lot of it gets into the whole gender dynamics issue where maybe I'm saying that because I'm looking at that from that angle. Maybe that's not really what it was, but it definitely seemed like that. I'll put it that way. It seemed like that because, like the example where we had a female lead for the team. I don't, and we don't even know like what made them really select her because, in general, whether it was a guy or a gal, they were very nebulous about how they determined who they were going to choose, whether they were going to choose, Bob or they were going to choose Jane. They didn't really have very clearly delineated, standards and that sort of thing. And when the old lead, who was a great guy, he decided to take the position that was offered him in the process development team. Great guy, smart guy, funny guy, that sort of deal. But he decided to take that position. That obviously the lead position opened up, and this one girl on the shift, who, she made no, what's the expression? She made no bones about it, or whatever you want to call it. She was very clear in that for the fact that her 100% focus was money. And there were things that she was doing that would technically be considered like probably a conflict of interest type stuff where like she was working at this other biotech company while working at this company, and they were technically speaking like a competitor of us. I don't know if this is a direct competitor or not, but in that sort of ballpark of being a competitor, that's something that you're not supposed to do. If you're working at company X, you don't go also work at company Y, who are competing with company X. But she was doing that. Somehow she got away with that. And top of that, like I said, she was just all about money. There was no sort of camaraderie with the rest of the shift really. And then when, for whatever reason, they decided to select her as the lead, it was just almost like one HR worthy problem after the next, where she was picking fights with people. She was mishandling other people's interpersonal conflict. Instead of moving people around the lab if they weren't getting along, just saying, okay, you go work at station A and you go work at station G, let's say, where there's some separation, some distance between those two folks. You don't have the conflict flaring up, and people can just get their work done. That sort of deal. It was no, you have to work together, we're putting you together, and I don't care if da-da-da-da-da. It was like that. And there are situations, obviously, I'm sure people can make a hypothetical where it's okay, you're just gonna have to work with this person you don't like, that sort of thing. But it was sort of the way she handled it wasn't okay, I want to sit down with you two and we're gonna chat about this. It was more well, for one thing, she would go talk to person A, and then when she heard a person A say XYZ bad things about the person B, she'd then go to person B and say, person A said this and that about you. And it's like, you don't do that. That's one. It was like, it's something that would seem so obvious. Like, no, that's not how you handle that. That aspect of it. Then, after having done that and stirring them up even further, she then goes and says, "No, you guys are working together. Just get in the lab, go work together, get stuff done." That sort of thing. And I'm not saying which side of that conflict was right or wrong. You could say, "Oh, this person is really gruff and they need to work on their people skills." Yeah, my nose is kind of itchy. And maybe the other person needs to be less sensitive, or what. You could take different angles. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm not taking any actual, hard, fast position on things. But she really bungled that, the lead, and it got really bad that week. And that was the week that supervisor was out. They thought he might have COVID. Turns out he didn't, and he came back, and it was almost like him coming back to the lab, to the to the fort or to the island or whatever, and it's turned into like Lord of the Flies, or everything's been burnt to the ground. It's kind of like I just 1 week I was gone, and this is how you handled it. You didn't handle it, sort of thing. And there was that, and then there was this other time where these are two actual instances I can remember. Give a couple examples, but the other time had to do with the fact that there was one, I think it was one night where we were like short-staffed. We had some people out. I don't remember if they were just taking PTO, or if they were sick, or they had some other responsibilities, but we were short-staffed, and basically we did the best we could as far as like what we could get done. And then the other shift, the day shift, they came on and they had like twice the number of people or something like that. And instead of like recognizing the fact that we'd done the best that we could, and being our advocate, she basically went up to the senior techs on the shift, and we're telling them like how, oh, the other shift is so much better than you guys, but they got all this stuff done, and why couldn't you? And it was just like, we're short-staffed. We have all these people out, and you're supposed to be the leader, you're supposed to be our advocate. You're supposed to sort of fight for us, if you will. It's almost like, well, why don't you just go join the other team? You think they're so great. Why don't you just change shifts? And she was going up to those people who on the team who had I don't know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years experience, who were like way above her freaking pay grade, and treating them like that. And of course, the irony is obviously that, like, when you're made the lead, they raise your pay all the way up to like a tier 3 technician, which practically places you on like the same level pay wise as these senior techs, even if you've only been there for 6 months and you haven't worked at any other biotech job. You don't got that was so much of the problem there. Was like, you have someone who either had only worked at one other place for like a year or two, or they hadn't worked at any place. They were fresh out of college, no real world work experience, and within 6 months they're being made the lead, and having to sort of tell people who are like twice their age, have way more experience, like how to do X, Y, Z, and it's like, like, no, buddy, or no, sweetie, you really don't know what you're talking about. Like, why are they making you the person in charge, And there's that whole sort of like gray area where it was like, okay, whether or not it really was a case of, okay, the supervisor's got the hots for this girl, or he's just, he or she is of a certain mindset when it comes to, gender issues, or politics of some kind, or when you want to bring race or religion, or whatever they might be of, or it might not be that case. And it might honestly be like that quote unquote looked at the numbers and were like, well, the numbers tell us that this person is a better fit for this position, or whatever the case may be. It just left open an area where you could like throw in all those interpretations and go, oh, it's because of this or it's because of that. It wasn't like clearly delineated or described or so on. The fact that that lead had to screw up so many times before they finally pulled her aside and had a little sit down and were like, we need you to step down from this position. You're obviously not a good fit for the role. We've had all these complaints. We've had all these issues. And then they finally made this other person, this guy who, he joined a short bit after me, but, my opinion was, pretty high of him. I had literally recommended him because when we were all kind of complaining to the supervisor about the old lead, not the old lead, not the one that was there when I started, but the one afterwards. When we were complaining about her, then he'd ask us, okay, so you can come to me and complain, but what's the solution to this problem? That sort of thing. And pretty much all of us have been we like this guy. He's good. He knows the process. He's got a biology background, and you know what? He's got bedside manners. He's funny. He's cool. He's nice. He's sociable. He gets along with pretty much everyone on the shift. He doesn't go and do XYZ, stuff to stir things up. He's workable, and he works with people, and he tries to, solve these problems and all that kind of stuff as opposed to making more problems. He has actually gone above and beyond, put in extra hours, all that kind of stuff. And they finally made him the lead. And that whole scenario, that whole fiasco with that, the second lead for my time there, that's a large part of why I left. There was that, all the stuff that I, described, and then there was her just basically driving people out of the shift. There were at least 2 people who left in part due to her, because they were just okay, if there's another spot open and on the other night shift, I'll go there. Then I don't have to put up with this kind of mistreatment. Oh man, oh shoot, can't miss my freaking exit. Okay, they let me over. And we're in. Whew. Sorry about that. Apparently I was making so much good time and really caught up in talking about the stuff that I didn't notice that my exit was coming up. So, anyways, but yeah, it was, those are the reasons why I left. Obviously I couldn't delineate that in my exit interview or my exit, survey. I didn't really say anything. I wanted to be kind of neutral about it. Because, I didn't want to burn all the bridges, so to speak. There's always that possibility you might want to go back if things do change, if things do improve at the old company or whatever. I know one guy did do something like that where he was there for about a year and he left, went to another company. I don't know if he stayed there for a year, then he came back, and then about a year or 2 later, he joined the process development team. So, the thing is that no company is perfect, but there are some things that will, make me be like, nah, I'm not doing this. Especially when you have sort of almost like a schizophrenic sort of, you gotta read between the lines, you gotta just get it sort of understanding where it's okay, you're just supposed to know that this is more important, or here's what you have to do in this situation, yada yada. And it's if I've only been here for a few months, no, I don't know all that kind of stuff, okay? And I shouldn't be expected to know all that kind of stuff in just a few months, But, positive work environment. See, I wonder if I can even find one of those places, because it's sort of like all jobs suck, you know. Unless you're the CEO of the company and you're making bank and you're getting all these props and all that sort of stuff, then maybe. But even then, I'm sure like even being at the top, there's still stuff you're just like, oh, not this kind of garbage. Like why can't this team or those individuals, why can't they just solve this problem so that I don't have to worry about the quarterly financial report, the results causing the company's stock to tank or something like that. I'm sure there's stuff like that, but it's something that I kind of caught this morning with it's in one of these podcast snippets. But it's almost like the difference between being in a situation where you have to put up with this kind of stuff versus something where you can be like, nah, I'm good, I can walk away. And unfortunately, what I'm dealing with and what I'm probably walking into today is stuff that I have to deal with, which is why it's so paramount for me to get these finances straightened out as soon as I can, because that's the only thing that'll let me really, in my opinion at least, just walk away from a bad situation if I'm not quote unquote feeling it. So anyways, I'm actually parking close to the building today. Let me see if I did this right. I'm gonna pull back a bit and then try to move to the right. Anyways, what else? I really don't know. Technically speaking, this is Nofap Day 137. I'll put that on the title, but as I said, like I get further on with this sort of stuff, that becomes less of a real concern, and it's just about like dealing with all this other stuff in life and handling it. So I don't know what I'm gonna do, what type of strategy to take, but anyways, I'm gonna finish the recording and head in. I got maybe like 9-10 minutes until I would have to be in there, and if I can just go grab that box and take it to the back and just head it up to the warehouse folks, like that'll just take that, that'll solve that for me. And at least that day won't have been completely wasted, and I'll have gotten that done. Though I'm sure, I don't know, these coworkers and the bosses and all that, like, I'm sure there's gonna be some sort of, whether it's spoken or unspoken, some sort of hostility. But anyways, I'll see you folks around. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.